Hi there, and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. This video is aimed primarily at the AQA GCSE biology course, but it will also be applicable to several other courses, for example the Edexcel International Biology course. We're going to be looking at chapter B18.7, Maintaining Biodiversity. In several of the other videos I've done for this particular course, we've looked at issues such as acid rain, global warming, deforestation, all of which have caused harm to the environment in a variety of different ways and have decreased biodiversity. So it's very important that we as a species try and find ways to maintain biodiversity, and we're going to go through several of those different ways that we can increase or maintain biodiversity in the variety of different ecosystems in this video. As always, watch out for the learning outcomes and the syllabus references as we go through. Humans are a threat to biodiversity. However, increasingly people are putting in place programs and policies that try to reduce the negative effects that humans have on the ecosystem. And these are beginning to increase and maintain biodiversity. One method of this is breeding programs. Now, breeding programs have been used to restore some endangered species to a sustainable population size and increase the biodiversity. However, breeding programs are very difficult because they're often unsuccessful. Many rare plants and animals do not reproduce easily or quickly, especially in captivity like in zoos. And artificial breeding programs, even when they are successful, must be very carefully monitored to prevent inbreeding and the associated increased risk of genetic diseases in the population of the species you're breeding. Even if successful, the habitat that the organism may live in or need to survive may have been lost, so your population of the species you've bred may have nowhere to be released into the wild. However, some breeding programs have been incredibly successful. For example, the giant panda and the Przewalski horse, herds of which now live wild in Mongolia. Both of these species, we have a very large population size, both in the wild and in captivity now, which is helping to preserve and increase and maintain biodiversity. Another method we can use to maintain biodiversity is the protection and regeneration of wild habitats. Many habitats have become increasingly rare. Animals and plants that have adapted through natural selection to living in these habitats are also increasingly under threat. When people protect these habitats or allow these habitats to regenerate, this protects the biodiversity which exists in those areas. Coral reefs, mangroves and heathlands are all rare habitats that have been threatened by destruction. However, in many countries, many of these are now protected by laws. For example, the heathlands of Derbyshire and the northern areas of the UK. One habitat that's very important to protect are mangroves. Mangroves are important nurseries for young fish, and many mangroves have been destroyed by shoreline developments. Mangroves are also vulnerable to changes in water levels and changes in salinity, but mangroves offer a large amount of protection to the shores and to the areas beyond. For example, high tides or tsunamis are often reduced in their impact by having mangroves at the shore's edge. Where I live in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, often the mangroves have been destroyed already for developments of hotels and housing. However, in some areas they are being protected, and the benefits of mangroves to biodiversity and to the area in general has been recognised. Another habitat that's really important to protect are coral reefs. Coral reefs, like the one that we can see here, have some of the highest biodiversities of anywhere on the entire planet. Just in this one image, there could easily be hundreds or possibly thousands of different species of coral and fish in this very small area. However, if the coral reefs are not protected, it's very easy to turn them into the areas like this here, where the coral reef has been bleached and damaged, and the amount of biodiversity there is much lower than it is in the first coral reef here. To protect coral reefs, you must tackle carbon dioxide emissions and global warming, because coral reefs are very sensitive to changes in temperature and pH, both of which are associated with increased carbon dioxide levels. For example, more carbon dioxide leads to more global warming, which increases the temperature and damages coral reefs. And also, larger amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere mean more carbon dioxide dissolved in the water, which decreases the pH and makes the water more acidic, which can also badly damage coral reefs and lead to our decrease here of all the biodiversity that we can see. Another method of maintaining biodiversity is to reintroduce hedgerows and field margins. You can see here an example of a hedgerow at the edge of a field in the UK. Many farmers have removed these hedgerows to produce large fields. These bigger fields make harvesting crops far more efficient, and this is something that's desirable to a farmer because there's less wastage of money and time when trying to gather in the crops. However, the lack of hedgerows and field margins reduces biodiversity on farms, and it's also led to soil erosion, which leads to a decrease in the crop yield that the farmer will be expecting. So farmers are now replanting hedgerows and reintroducing wildflower margins around the edge of a field, and the biodiversity of the countryside is now increasing once again. Another bonus or benefit of this is also that farmers are finding there's a greater insect life, particularly bees, which is helping to fertilise many of the crop plants that the farmers are trying to grow. Another method of maintaining biodiversity is the reduction of deforestation and reduction of carbon emissions. Some governments are working hard to reduce the effect of deforestation and the increase in carbon dioxide levels. For example, Costa Rica has protected its rainforests and cloud forests and reduced deforestation. Deforested land is being purchased and allowed to return to forests, and now tourists are paying to visit these forests and view the biodiversity. So areas of the land that were once viewed as having no economic benefit to the country or to the people are now viewed as having a high economic benefit. Many governments are also working with transport and electricity companies to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. Carbon dioxide emissions of new cars is also falling due to government regulations. You can also see on this graph here the effects of some governmental agreements or international agreements between governments. For example, the Kyoto Protocol here, and you can see that after 2014-15, when this was introduced, we had a steep decrease in the carbon dioxide levels around the world. So this is helping to reduce carbon dioxide levels, reduce deforestation, and maintain biodiversity, not just in forests but in coral reefs and other areas. The final way of maintaining biodiversity that we're going to look at in this video is the recycling of resources. Waste placed in landfill sites produces pollution and methane gases. Landfill sites also reduce the land available for species to live on, and so reduce biodiversity. Now, many countries are working to increase the amount of waste that is recycled, and this includes paper, plastic, glass and metals, and this reduces the amount of waste in landfill sites. Organic waste is also recycled and composted in methane generators, and households and companies are now all contributing to the recycling effort. Governments have contributed by taxing materials that are put into landfill, and as you can see on this graph here, the amount of money per tonne from landfill sites is actually increasing, and tax revenue, and therefore the amount of materials going into landfill sites is decreasing, and this is having a positive effect on the environment and helping to maintain biodiversity. One example of how successful recycling resources can be comes from GM Motors, the US company which in 2012 recycled 84% of their manufacturing waste, and this saved 2.2 million tonnes of landfill waste and prevented 11 million tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions, which is a huge success. If more companies follow this lead, then there can be really a massive positive impact on the maintenance of biodiversity around the world. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video on maintaining biodiversity. If you have, please like and subscribe, and thank you very much for supporting the channel.